when people say the Congo, they can mean one of many different things. Like, so for example, there's the Democratic Republic of the Congo. But if you notice on this map, to the west of it is the Republic of the Congo, which is an entirely different nation. And then sometimes when people say the Congo, they actually mean the Congo River, which is shaped like an upside down horseshoe, traversing through the country, the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Let's talk about the people of the Congo. So there are 78 million people, and to give you a perspective as to how large that is, well, the largest country in Western Europe is France, and that has 67 million people. So the DRC is actually has 20% more people than France. It's the 16th largest country in the world. And as with any country, people live in big cities like the capital city of Kinshasa, which is actually where MiHEC has been focusing a lot of its relief efforts. But then you have people living in rural areas and in huts, for example. And then, of course, the people of the DRC, they speak a different language than us. So what language do they speak? Well, that's actually kind of a trick question because they speak 242 different languages there. But only 5 of them are nationally recognized. The first of which is French. There are 33 million French speakers in the DRC, making it by far the largest country outside of France where French is spoken. But there are also 4 more local languages. So you have in the south, for example, you have Congo, is spoken a lot. In the west and the north, there's Lingala, which is spoken in Kinshasa, and in the east, you have Swahili. In the south, you have Chiluba. Now, you would think that Lingala is the second most spoken language in the DRC after French because it's spoken in Kinshasa, but no, it's actually Swahili. Okay, and so let's talk about health in the DRC. The DRC has been polio-free for over 3 years, which is quite an achievement considering the lack of infrastructure, the lack of accessibility to hospitals over there. But then there are other things like the fertility rate. There are 6.6 children per mother, making it one of the highest fertility rates in the world. And then something like 43% of children under the age of 5 are stunted, which is indicative of chronic malnutrition. And then malaria, unfortunately, is a big problem out there. They actually have the second highest number of malaria cases in the world. Can anybody guess what's number 1 in that department? It is in Africa. No guesses? Okay, well, it's Kenya. So the DRC has almost as many cases as Kenya. It's such a big problem that the DRC accounts for 11% of the global cases of malaria, and 1 out of every 5 deaths of children under the age of 5 is from malaria. Now, speaking of children, unfortunately, for education, the story isn't too much better either. So, as with most countries, there are 6 years of primary school. There are 6 years of secondary school. However, there are 3.5 million children in the DRC of primary school age who are not attending primary school. And then 43% of the children who are in primary school, well, they start late. They start after the age of 6. And then 2/3 of those children who enter 1st grade, they don't make it to 6th grade. Then 3/4 of those who make it to 6th grade, they don't pass the exam. So the education system is not in great shape. Now there's a pretty, well, I wouldn't say it's a simple reason, but one of the reasons for that is due to money. So in the DRC, education is not free. For each child attending school, the tuition is roughly $150, so which is a lot of money for families out there. The DRC is one of the poorest countries in the world. How poor is it? Well, let's talk about the economy and industry in the DRC. So the gross domestic product of the DRC is $68 billion. Now, for me, $68 billion, that has a lot of zeros. But to put it in perspective, our state of Colorado, last year, the GDP was over $300 billion, and that's with a population of under 5 million people. Just the other day, I was reading about the net worth of Mark Zuckerberg. His net worth is $66 billion. So, in other words, Mark Zuckerberg has as much wealth as the value of all services and products produced in the DRC last year. So that gives you an idea of just how poor the DRC is. Now, okay, most of the GDP is in agriculture. We have 58% of the GDP is in agriculture, about 2/3 of the people working in agriculture. One ironic thing about the DRC is that it's very resource rich. So for example, the DRC has 70% of the world supply of this mineral, of which there's an element I'm sure all of you have in your pocket right now that is derived from this mineral. Can anybody guess what this element or mineral is? It's not silicon. Or it's not zinc. Lithium. It's not lithium or oxide. It's kind of a difficult question because I have to be honest, I had never even heard of this element before, and I aced high school chemistry. But it is tantalum, and that is derived from coltan, which is this mineral over here. DRC has 70% of it. Unfortunately, the smuggling and the sale of coltan has financed a lot of wars in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And speaking of wars, I'm going to talk about the history now. Okay, so this is going to be the ultra condensed version of the history of the DRC. I'm sure the founders of Encyclopedia Britannica, they're going to be rolling their boats, but I only have a couple minutes. So here, we'll start from the very beginning. 90,000 years ago, the first humans settled in the Congo area. And then between the 14th and the 19th century, the Kingdom of Congo ruled over the west, other kingdoms ruled over the east. The first Portuguese explorers and missionaries settled in the DRC, but it wasn't until about 1870 that European exploration really began, and that was sponsored by King Leopold II of Belgium. He privatized the area, and then he dubbed it the Belgian Free State, which was a very ironic name because many people over there were enslaved to make rubber. But anyhow, so this Belgian Free State was in existence until 1908, which is when King Leopold II, he convinced the Belgian government to annex the region, which they did very reluctantly, and then it was known as Belgian Congo. Until 1960, that's when Belgian Congo became independent, along with its neighbor, French Congo. Both of these countries were renamed the Republic of the Congo. They were distinct countries, they had the same name, very confusing, right? So a lot of times, when people refer to one of those countries, they would talk about the respective capitals. They would say, oh, okay, so the Republic of the Congo, Brazzaville, or Republic of the Congo, Kinshasa. A few years after that, in 1965, then Joseph Désiré Mobutu, he staged a military coup. He came to power. Some years after that, in 1971, the country was renamed Zaire, until the first Congo War And in 1997, then there's a military commander named Laurent Désiré Kabila. And he came to power, he became the president of this country. The country was renamed the Democratic Republic of the Congo. But then there's a second Congo War, a few years after that, and in the midst of this war, his bodyguard assassinated him, some bodyguard deals, right? But 6 days after that, then Kabila's son, Joseph, he became president, and he's still president to this day, 17 years later. Now, Tina, in a few minutes, she's gonna talk about life in the DRC, living under Mobutu and Kabila. But before I turn it over to her, I'm gonna give you just a few fun facts of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. So who here remembers the rumble in the jungle? Okay, very, very good, yeah. For those of you who haven't heard of it, it was one of boxing's most famous fights. It was between Muhammad Ali and George Foreman. Zaire had paid many millions of dollars to host this fight. And in this fight, Muhammad Ali, he backed up against the ropes for 7 rounds, and he employed this rope-a-dope strategy. George Foreman was beating him up and wasting all of his energy, while in the 8th round, pow, Muhammad Ali knocked him out. And then many years later, then Rocky Balboa in Rocky III employed that same strategy. So anyhow, that was the rumble in the jungle. Another fun fact is it was only 10 years ago that the first automatic teller machine became present in the DRC. And of course, that was only available in large cities like Kinshasa. Outside of the cities, even to this day, basically all transactions are done in cash. Another fun fact, the great apes, including the bonobos, they are only found in the Congo area. Now, unfortunately, due to things like pollution or deforestation, the great apes, they may become extinct in about 10 years, but they are only found in the Congo area. And then the last fun fact I have for you is, despite how poor the DRC is, they actually do have a space shuttle program. And just a few years ago, they launched this shuttle called the Troposphere 5. This is their 5th version of their shuttle. They were trying to send a living being into space. This shuttle was going to be launched 22 miles in the atmosphere, and it had a live rat in there. Well, so it launched. Unfortunately, it started veering off course. Then it crashed. The rat died. All in the name of science, of course. But they do have a space shuttle program. So anyhow, I'm going to turn it over to Tina, our MiHEC's president and